A cold CEO fired his assistant, convinced she had betrayed him. But just a few months later, he risked everything to save her from a dark conspiracy. Before we begin, comment below and let us know where you're watching from. And when the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy the show. Ethan Blake, CEO of the multinational tech giant BreakTech, never let emotions interfere with business. He lived by the rules and despised betrayal more than anything. But now he had received damning evidence that his trusted assistant, the same woman who had always called him out on his mistakes, was secretly colluding with a competitor. Ethan clenched his phone tightly, staring in disbelief at the photo of Ava Morgan sitting in a car, apparently having a conversation with his biggest rival. There were also screenshots of their message exchanges. The evidence was clear. It pointed straight to Ava as the traitor. He had asked her to investigate the security breach in the company, never suspecting she might be the one behind it. He pressed his fingers against his temple, swallowed his hesitation, and called HR. Terminate Ava Morgan immediately. Meanwhile, Ava was still bent over the Q-Or budget report, her eyes bloodshot from working through the night. She'd been meticulously connecting every clue, determined to find out who was leaking confidential information. It was Ethan's request, and she treated it as her top priority. Suddenly, a message from HR appeared. She was to leave the company immediately. She blinked, read it again, then again. The office around her seemed to freeze. Even the clacking of keyboards fell silent. No one said anything, but a few people had begun sneaking glances at her. Why? What did I do wrong? Ava stood up. Her chair rolled back and hit the filing cabinet behind her, but she didn't care. Humiliation burned through her chest. She walked down the hallway like an arrow with no direction, confused, furious, and utterly blindsided. She had stayed up all night, done everything by the book, and now she was fired by a cold, heartless email? Ava pushed open the CEO's office door. No knock, no warning. Ethan looked up briefly from his desk, then calmly returned to organizing his papers as if nothing had happened. I want to know why. Her voice was hoarse. Gone was the polite, measured tone she always used. This was the voice of someone who had just been stripped of her trust and her dignity. Ethan didn't look at her. HR should have explained. I'm not asking them. I'm asking you. Silence. She stepped closer to his desk. What did I do wrong? Ethan finally looked up slowly. His eyes weren't cold. They were empty, like someone who had just lost something without realizing it. You know better than I do, Ava. I don't. I really don't. Her voice broke. I've been working day and night. I was investigating the leak, just like you asked. I know. Then why? He threw a folder on the desk. Ava looked down. Photos, taken from a distance. She was sitting in a car talking to a man, his face obscured, but unmistakably Caleb Lynn, the rival CEO. Ava froze. Her eyes widened. You think I betrayed the company? I don't think, Ava, Ethan said, rising to his feet. I saw. The air grew thick. Ava didn't move. Her arms fell to her sides. The folder slipped from her fingers to the floor without a sound. So this is it. You'd rather believe some blurry photos than the person who stood by your side for 2 years. You chose to betray me first, Ethan said softly, but it cut like a blade. Ava let out a bitter laugh. Before walking away, she gave him one last look. Ethan, you'll regret this. The heavy door closed behind her. Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhaustion flooding his chest. He tried to convince himself he'd done the right thing, that the evidence was clear. But why did he feel so empty inside? Perhaps no one knew it better than Ethan Blake. He never truly trusted anyone, not even the one person he trusted most. The next morning, Ethan sat alone in his office trying to focus on the financial report open in front of him, but his eyes kept drifting, back to that empty chair just a few meters away, the one Ava always sat in when they worked late together. He sighed, silently scolding himself for still caring. She betrayed me. It's over. Don't look back. He muttered to himself, picking up his phone, hoping the morning news would distract him. But then, a headline slammed into his chest like a punch. Former BrakeTech CEO assistant severely injured in suspected brake failure accident. Ethan froze. His grip tightened around the phone until it nearly cracked in his hand. Brake failure? How could this just be a coincidence? A chill ran down his spine. His pulse spiked. A deep instinct screamed inside him. Something was terribly wrong. He stood up abruptly, snatched his coat from the rack. "Cancel all my meetings today," he barked, sharper than he'd sounded in years. "But the engineering board, I said cancel everything." He stormed out of the office, walking so fast it was nearly a run, as if every second was pulling Ava further and further away from him. And then, her voice echoed in his mind. That girl standing in his office 3 days ago, that cold smile, that steel-edged voice. "Ethan, you'll regret this." But now, what hurt most? Wasn't that warning? It was the thought that if Ava really died, he might never be forgiven. Ethan walked down the long hallway, the faint scent of antiseptic lingering in the air. No bodyguards, no assistant, no schedule. Just a man carrying the weight of guilt, moving past sterile white doors as cold and silent as the distance that now lay between him and the woman he once accused. He stopped when he saw a little girl curled up on a bench outside the ICU. Her hair was tied loosely to one side, her sneakers faded and worn, a stuffed bunny clutched in her arms. Her young face was pale, exhausted from lack of sleep. She looked up when she noticed Ethan. Their eyes met for a few seconds. Then her voice, soft and hesitant, broke the silence. "Are you my sister Ava's friend?" Ethan froze. Friend? Such a simple word. Yet it struck him like someone had just tightened their grip around his heart. He walked over and quietly sat beside her. A moment passed before he gave a slow nod, as if admitting, I could have been her friend. But now, I'm not sure if that's still possible. The girl pressed her lips together, her eyes clear but heavy with sadness. Ava never had any friends, only me. I hope you can be her friend. Please don't leave her alone. Ethan turned to look at the small girl, the one Ava had given everything for without ever asking for anything back. "You're Ava's sister?" he asked. "Yes, my name is Leah." "Hi, Leah. I'm Ethan, and I really hope I can still be a friend to your sister, and maybe to you too." He reached out and gently patted her head. She didn't flinch, but her expression slowly began to crumble. A second later, she burst into tears. The sound of her sobs echoed down the quiet hospital corridor. "Ethan, I'm not a good sister. I always made Ava's life harder. She always gave me the best things, the good food, the warm clothes, the medicine, but now she's in there and I can't do anything. I'm just sitting here." Ethan wrapped a reassuring arm around her, gently rubbing her back. "It's okay, Leah. You've done more than enough. Ava would never blame you." Then he asked, in a soft, steady voice, "Can you tell me where she is? I think there's something I might be able to do." Leah pointed toward the end of the hallway, room 308. A small sign read, Intensive Care Unit. Ethan walked slowly toward it. Each step felt like a confession, unspoken, heavy. Inside the pale white room, soft light spilled gently from the overhead lamp. Ava lay on her side, her eyes open, staring out the window. Bandages wrapped around her forehead, her arm suspended in a sling, her leg in a cast, a few cuts still fresh at the corner of her lips. She knew he was there. She didn't seem surprised. She simply turned her head slightly, looked at him for a single second, and then looked away. Ethan froze, then stepped forward, stopping beside her bed. "Ava." She didn't answer. I didn't know. About you, about Leah, about everything you've been going through." Still silence, her gaze fixed on the window where clouds drifted slowly across the sky. "I believed a few photos, instead of believing the one person who stood by me for 2 years." No reaction. Then finally, Ava's voice, hoarse, tired but sharp enough to pierce through him. "Why did you come?" She looked him straight in the eye, eyes swollen and red, but as fierce as the last time they faced off in his office. "Did you come out of guilt, regret, or just to see if I'm still alive?" Ethan faltered. He had no answer. "Whatever the reason, it's too late." Her voice dropped, each word heavy as stone. "I don't want to see you." "Ava," he said, desperate, "I just want—" "Don't." She cut him off, her eyes locked on his. "If you truly want to help, then leave." A thick silence fell over the room. Ethan stood there, arms limp at his sides, not knowing what to say. For the first time in his life, a man who had always been in control couldn't control even a single word of forgiveness. That night, the hospital room was as silent and sterile as ever. Ava lay on her side, forcing herself to sleep. But the accident, Ethan's accusations, Leah's eyes, kept looping in her head like a nightmare with no end. Then, a soft click. The door creaked open. A nurse entered. White coat, face mask, polite posture, but something felt wrong. Off. Ava's eyes opened. "Late for a checkup, aren't you?" she asked, voice rough and dry. "I was just transferred to the night shift," the figure replied, walking quickly toward her bed. From their pocket, they drew out a syringe. The room was dim, but Ava could see clearly. That wasn't hospital equipment. A chill swept down her spine. "Wait!" Before she could move, the stranger grabbed her arm, trying to insert the needle into her IV. Bang! The door slammed open. "Stop right there!" Ethan's voice sliced through the air like a blade. The intruder whipped around, just as Ethan lunged, grabbing the attacker's arm and slamming it back. The syringe flew to the floor, its contents spilling across the tile. A sharp counterattack. The assailant rammed Ethan with their shoulder, knocking him aside. Before he could recover, they bolted into the hallway and vanished into the dark. Ethan gave chase, but it was too late. He returned moments later, breathless, shirt rumpled. Ava sat frozen in bed, pale. Her fingers clutched the blanket edge tightly. Her chest rose unevenly. This time, her eyes weren't cold. They were full of real fear. Ethan stepped forward slowly, voice low, shaken. "Ava, are you okay?" She pressed her lips together, frightened, but still defiant. "Don't think I owe you anything. You're the reason I'm in this mess." Ethan lowered his head. "I know, I just wanted to make things right." Ava stayed silent. Under the dim light, her face was still pale, but her eyes refused to cry. "I don't need your pity," she whispered. "I just need you to leave." Ethan was about to speak, but before he could, a small sound came from the corner of the room. "Ugh!" Both of them turned their heads. On the bench next to the bed, Leah, still clutching her worn-out bunny, was curled up tightly, her face contorted in pain. One small hand clutched at her shirt, her breath coming in sharp, broken gasps, as if someone had pressed the air out of her chest. "Leah?" Ava called out, breath catching in her throat. The little girl didn't respond. Her lips were turning blue. Her chest rose and fell unevenly. Her eyes widened in panic. "LIA!" Ava tried to leap up instinctively, but her body was too weak. She nearly toppled from the bed. Ethan rushed in just in time to catch her, holding her steady. "Don't push yourself," he said, urgently turning toward Leah. In a blink, he scooped the girl into his arms. Her body was ice cold, so light it felt like she might disappear. Ava's voice broke into sobs. "She has a congenital heart condition. If we don't get help now, she might—" "Nurse, doctor, emergency!" Ethan's voice thundered down the hall. A nurse burst in. Ethan gently laid Leah on Ava's bed, trying to steady her breathing, whispering, "It's okay. You'll be all right." Ava collapsed beside them, hands gripping the bed rail, shaking. "Leah, don't leave me. I'm sorry. It's my fault." Ethan reached out and held her hand, saying nothing. But in his eyes, for the first time in his life of power and control, was sheer fear and helplessness. 10 minutes later, Leah was rushed to a specialized cardiac ICU. Ava, still too weak, was moved to a temporary adjacent room, hooked to monitors in case of blood pressure collapse. She refused to be far. Ethan stood behind the glass, watching every move in the OR, his insides twisting with guilt. A stern-looking doctor approached. "We need consent to proceed with emergency heart surgery." "How much will it cost?" Ava asked hoarsely. "At least $180,000 for the operation and long-term recovery." Ava fell silent. Her fists clenched so tightly her nails pierced her skin. Blood formed at her palm. I don't have that kind of money." She turned toward Ethan, hesitating, eyes red, lips trembling. Then, for the first time in her life, the strong woman who had stood against the world alone broke down in tears. She grabbed the sleeve of his shirt, clinging to it like a final lifeline. "Ethan, please, save my sister. I'll repay you, no matter how long it takes. But right now, I can't lose her." Ethan froze. In that moment, he didn't see the unshakable Ava Morgan. He saw a fragile woman, aching to be protected. He didn't answer, just turned to the doctor and said, "Prepare the surgery. I'll cover all expenses. I'll sign." As the pen was placed in his hand, Ava reached out, grabbing his wrist. Her tears were gone, her gaze clear and firm. "I'll help you." Ethan blinked. "I was investigating the mole before I got pushed out. I still have the data, emails, access logs, even some internal call recordings. I never got the chance to use them, but now I will. Just let Leah live, and I'll help you find out who did this." Ethan tightened his grip on her hand, a grip that didn't promise revenge or redemption, just one thing: trust. 4 hours later, the surgical light dimmed. The operating room doors swung open. A female surgeon stepped out, pulled off her mask, and gave a small nod to Ava and Ethan, waiting in the hallway. The surgery was successful. We repaired the leaking heart valve and managed to stabilize her oxygen levels in time. Leah will be transferred to the ICU in a few hours. Ava collapsed into the nearest chair. Her entire body trembled, like a tight noose that had been strangling her for years had just been cut loose. She buried her face in her hands. She didn't cry anymore. She just breathed, deeply, exhaustedly, honestly. Ethan sat beside her, saying nothing. He knew. Sometimes silence is the loudest kind of comfort. A few minutes later, as Ava steadied herself, she turned to him. Her face was still pale, but in her eyes, the clarity and resolve of a woman ready to fight had returned. "I'll keep my word," she said quietly but firmly. "While investigating the breach, I gathered some evidence. Strange emails, system access logs, even a few recorded calls when I suspected my phone was tapped." Ethan straightened up. His chest tightened. Hope mingled with guilt. "Everything is on the laptop at my place. Small flat in Wexley, Unit 47D, in the old wooden bookshelf, second shelf from the left. There's a hidden compartment behind it. The laptop's there." "Password?" Ethan asked softly. Ava looked at him. A beat of silence passed. "Leah's birthday," she replied. "And don't worry, I've never changed it, because I could never forget that day." Ethan nodded. He stood, pulling his coat back on. "I'll bring the laptop tonight. Start combing through it immediately." Ava leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes. If what I suspect is true, then they weren't just trying to destroy me. They were coming for you, too. Late night. Wexley was quiet, eerily so. Ethan parked in front of Unit 47D. Now he sat at the small wooden desk, his eyes locked onto the screen of Ava's laptop. Everything she had collected, encrypted emails, IP logs, suspicious call recordings, was now laid bare before him. And when the names began to surface in the recordings, his heart skipped a beat. No, it couldn't be. Someone high up, very high up, had been manipulating the system, forging evidence, altering staff assignments, even issuing the termination order for Ava. Ethan gripped the mouse tight. But just then, "I'd advise you not to copy anything. A deep voice rang out behind him. Ethan shot to his feet and turned. Standing in the doorway, Richard Lang, one of the most senior board members of BreakTech, a man who had stood beside Ethan since the earliest startup days. He wore a dark suit, no smile, no pretense. His eyes were sharp as blades, his demeanor ice cold. "You've gone further than I expected," Richard said, stepping inside, empty-handed. But Ethan knew men like him didn't need weapons. "It was you." Ethan's voice trembled with fury. "You set her up. You caused the crash. You—" "No need to accuse," Richard cut in calmly. "I'm not denying it." Ethan's fists clenched. "You did all this to replace me." "Of course," Richard snapped. "I was tired of being your shadow. That company, BreakTech, should have been mine." He scoffed, then added with a smirk, "And Ava? She simply knew too much." Richard stepped closer, then slowly pulled out a phone and placed it on the desk. "If you don't wipe every single file from that laptop right now, a message will be sent, and my people at the hospital—" He leaned in. "I will know what to do." Ethan froze. Ava, Leah. They wouldn't survive the night. The room fell silent, so silent it chilled the air. "Make your choice, Ethan." Richard's voice was soft, eerily soft, like he was negotiating just another contract. Justice or 2 innocent lives? Ethan took a deep breath. His throat tightened. His chest felt crushed under a stone. He'd once told himself, if he had the truth, he would fight. He'd expose everything, shine a light on the darkness. But now, 2 lives, outside the game, were being forced to carry its cost. Ava, Leah, the woman he'd once betrayed over a fake photo, and the little girl who'd called him friend, only because her sister never had one. Ethan bowed his head. Silently, he sat down, opened the laptop, slowly, deliberately, folder by folder, file by file. He opened each one and hit delete. No backups, no transfers, no hidden drives. Each deletion cut deeper than the last. He erased the traitor's name, erased the proof of a murder, erased his chance to ever clear his own name. Finally, the screen was blank, the drive wiped clean. Ethan looked up. "It's done." Richard picked up his phone, typed a short command, just a few taps, slipped it back into his pocket. "My men will withdraw from the hospital immediately." He adjusted his cufflinks as if finishing a board meeting. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Once you resign as CEO, I'll make sure you get a monthly stipend. You'll be taken care of." Ethan didn't reply. There was nothing left to say to the man before him. Morning had just broken. Soft sunlight filtered through the foggy hospital window. Ethan took a deep breath, straightened his collar, and pushed open the door. Ava was sitting on the bed, her hair slightly tousled, face pale, but her eyes bright and focused. She stared out the window, gaze drifting somewhere far away. At the sound of the door, she turned, slightly surprised, then smiled. "You came back." Ethan returned a faint smile. "Yeah, sorry I took so long." He walked over, pulled up a chair. "I went to your place. Found the laptop and everything you collected." Ava gave a small nod. A flicker of hope shimmered in her eyes. "And? Did it have anything?" Ethan paused. In his mind, delete. Richard's cold eyes, the silence of that choice. He looked up and gently lied. "Yes, plenty." His voice calm. "Enough to trace some leads, though the real mastermind is still hiding well." "You still don't know who it is?" Ethan nodded. This time, not entirely a lie. "Not yet, but I'm seeing the cracks now, and with what you left me, I won't be blind anymore." Ava nodded. "If you ever need my help, just ask. I'll do what I can." Ethan gave a soft laugh. "It's late, but I still want to apologize properly for not trusting you." He hesitated, then added, "I didn't know anything about you, about your life, about your sister. Maybe I wasn't a very good leader." Ava reached out and took his hand, gently stopping him. "No one could have led better than you. Because of the fair pay and bonuses you gave me, Leah made it through countless emergencies. Her health has improved so much thanks to that." She took a breath and continued, "And I get why you didn't trust me. Yes, I did meet with the rival company that day and handed over a USB, but it was a fake. I wanted to pretend I'd switch sides so I could root out the real traitor. I should have told you, but I assumed my position was more secure than it was. That was my mistake." Ethan never imagined that the person he doubted, hurt, and forced to walk away would be the first to forgive him. "Thank you, Ava." His voice slightly hoarse, but steady. Ava looked at him for a long moment, then smiled, more gently than ever before. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan. We're just two people who misunderstood each other, trying to make it right." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun had fully risen, but inside the room, the air still felt calm, grounded. Ethan checked his watch and stood up. "I need to head back. There's some work at the company I have to handle, but get some rest. I'll keep you updated if anything moves forward." Ava nodded, bidding him goodbye. 3 days later. Ava was discharged from the hospital. Leah still needed a few more days of observation, but her condition was stable. While waiting for Ethan to pick her up, Ava sorted through the stack of personal documents a nurse had brought in. Among them was an old fabric pouch, the one she used to carry a backup USB. Ava froze. "This drive, I always leave it at home. But that day, I brought it, just in case my laptop failed." She opened the pouch. The silver USB stick was still inside, untouched. A cold shiver ran down her spine. If Ethan really accessed the laptop's files, then he never knew there was a complete version on this one, which meant he might not have seen everything. Her heart pounded. Ava grabbed her phone and logged into her secret cloud storage, the one that had synced temporarily before the accident. But the entire folder had been deleted 2 days ago, right after Ethan's visit. Ava sat frozen, her palms cold and damp. He said he found evidence. But if that's true, why would he delete the cloud backup? And why didn't he ever mention Richard, the one I suspected most? She replayed everything in her mind, his uncharacteristic self-doubt, the way he claimed he wasn't fit to lead anymore. Ethan, who had always been confident, even arrogant, he would never say something like that, unless... A heavy knot tightened in her chest. She took a breath, opened her messages, and texted Rachel, an old colleague still working in BreakTech's executive division. "Rachel, can you tell me how things are going at the company lately?" Less than a minute later, Rachel replied, "Oh my God, Ava, you won't believe it. Things have been so tense since you left. There's a major shareholder meeting happening today." "I only heard rumors, but I think Mr. Ethan is stepping down." Ava shot to her feet. Her heart thundered. "Stepping down? Why?" A voice whispered inside her. "He's trying to carry it all alone." She remembered Ethan's face during his hospital visit, the way he avoided her gaze, the vague way he spoke about faint traces and not finding the real mastermind. Not because he hadn't found them, but because he had, and was hiding the truth, enduring everything, because he feared that if he said it aloud, she and Leah would be in danger. She quickly typed back, "What time is the meeting?" 2 p.m. sharp, Rachel replied. Ava looked down at her watch. The minute hand had just ticked past the 12, 2-hour p.m. Exactly. Her heart skipped a beat. There was no time left to think. If I don't go now, he'll walk away for good, and the truth will never come to light. She didn't change clothes, didn't brush her hair, just shoved her phone into her coat pocket and burst out of the hospital hallway. Her footsteps echoed behind her like a ticking clock counting down. Conference room, 28th floor, BreakTech headquarters. The tension in the air was razor sharp. Major shareholders, executive board members, department heads. Everyone was present. At the center, standing tall behind the podium, was Ethan Collins. He held the speech he'd prepared the night before in one hand. The spotlight shone on his face but couldn't hide the shadow in his eyes. Just below, second row to the right, Richard Lang sat with arms folded, reclining comfortably. He smirked as if watching a play he had directed to perfection. Ethan looked down at the speech. The opening line he had rehearsed over and over again. "I would like to thank you for the years I've spent working alongside BreakTech, but today I believe I am no longer the right person to lead this company." He opened his mouth to speak, but right at that moment, the conference room door swung open. A soft sound, but it echoed through the hushed space like thunder. Everyone turned. A pale, thin woman entered. Ava, wearing a long gray coat, her hair slightly tousled, but her eyes blazing with determination. Her steps were slightly shaky, yet resolute. No one stopped her. No one spoke. The entire room was mesmerized by her sudden arrival. Richard tilted his head slightly, his lips tightening just for a second. Ethan was frozen. Ava stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard. Then she looked directly at the stage. "You're not resigning." Ethan gripped his speech tighter. His voice dropped, hesitant. "Ava, you shouldn't be here. Your health—" "I'm fine." Ava cut him off, stepping forward slowly but firmly. "And I'm here to protect you." The room buzzed. Richard raised an eyebrow. Ava turned to face the board, her gaze cutting through the silence. "I have information proving Ethan was not involved in the data breach. He was the one being set up." The air turned heavy. Ethan stood frozen. Richard, though still wearing his calm expression, had begun tapping a single finger rhythmically on the armrest, a habit never seen in prior meetings. Ava said no more. She walked to the control panel and plugged a USB into the large screen at the front of the room. "I'm not here to argue. I just want everyone to watch the evidence I've gathered, then decide who truly deserves to step down." A department head whispered under his breath, "Unbelievable. Who could possibly manipulate the entire system like this?" A board member lifted his head, voice heavy. "How could none of us on the board have noticed?" And then, amid the rising murmurs, Ethan's voice cut through the room, sharp as a blade. "Richard, got anything to say? You're the one who orchestrated all of this." The room fell dead silent. Every pair of eyes turned to Richard, who had, until now, sat like an innocent bystander, completely unfazed. Richard slowly rose. He adjusted the cuff of his shirt and glanced at Ethan with a frosty calm. "I'm the mastermind?" he said, voice low and condescending. "Ethan, are you really this desperate? Spinning tales now?" But Ethan didn't flinch. He stepped forward, voice firm, unshaken. "I once admired you. I truly believed you were someone I could trust. But everything I saw that night, and everything Ava uncovered, says otherwise." Richard gave a scoff and turned to address the board. "As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, all words. No real evidence." He's grasping at straws, deflecting. But then Ava stood up. "Are you sure about that?" she asked, quietly but with a sharpness laced in contempt. She turned to the control panel, pressed a button. The screen lit up again. This time, security footage from Ava's home. Richard Lang, entering without permission, breaking in past midnight. Gasps echoed around the room. A board member exclaimed, "My God, is this real? He actually broke into her house?" Ava nodded calmly. "And I've already forwarded this footage to the police this morning." Just then, the doors opened. 2 police officers stepped inside. "Mr. Richard Lang, you are under arrest for unlawful entry and suspected corporate tampering. Please come with us." Richard's face drained of color. He instinctively took a step back, but there was nowhere left to run. After the meeting, people slowly filtered out of the grand conference room, still murmuring about what had just unfolded. Richard had been taken away by the police, the once powerful man now walking out in shame. His head hung low. Ethan remained standing, watching him disappear down the corridor. Then he turned toward Ava, who still stood near the chairman's table, composed, as if she hadn't just shaken the company to its core. "Ava, thank you. If it weren't for you, Things could have ended very differently. Ava gave a faint smile. I did it for the truth, not for anyone. Ethan nodded, but his eyes betrayed something deeper, something unspoken. I know you've resigned, he said quietly, but I want to ask you to return to BreakTech. Not as a former employee, but as a partner, someone I trust completely. Ava paused, studied him for a second. Honestly, even if you hadn't fired me, I was going to resign after all this. My plan was to uncover the mastermind, clear your name, and then walk away. She exhaled slowly, her gaze drifting to the high, endless sky outside. I've chosen a different path now. I want to build something of my own, a career that doesn't depend on anyone else. Ethan smiled, a touch of sadness in his eyes. So I'm losing one of the best talents I've ever had, huh? Ava Morgan. I have no doubt you'll make it. He stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. But if you need anything, support, legal help, funding. Ava gently interrupted him. You've already done enough, Ethan. You saved Leah. You nearly sacrificed your career just to protect me. We're even now. I don't want to owe you anything more. This time, I need to face it on my own. She said it softly but firmly, then turned and walked away without looking back. Ethan stood there, watching her go. A faint smile curved at the edge of his lips. Ava Morgan, until we meet again. A few months later, the autumn breeze slipped through the windows of a modest office in the heart of the city. Ava stood before a whiteboard, eyes tired but unwavering. Her company, her very first brainchild, was struggling. Funds were running low. Her team was thinning out. Partners were beginning to doubt her. She had tried, but maybe it wasn't enough. Just then the phone rang. Her assistant called from outside. There's someone here to see you. No appointment. Ava stepped out and stopped cold. It was Ethan, not in his usual black suit, but in a rolled-up shirt, calm as ever. But his eyes held a quiet warmth. What are you doing here? Ava asked, startled. Ethan smiled. Because I just made a considerable investment in this company. Ava blinked. What? He pulled a folder from his bag. I'm not listed directly, but I have a representative. The deal closed this morning. Ava stepped back in disbelief. Why, you promised you wouldn't help me anymore. Ethan looked at her, steady and certain. I'm not doing this to help you. And it's not out of guilt. I invested because your company has real potential. You saw problems before I did. You stood up against the system when no one else believed you. You deserve a shot. Ava said nothing, but the suspicion in her eyes faded, replaced by a quiet, wordless kind of gratitude. Ethan stepped forward. This time, we're partners. Equals. Ava slowly reached out her hand, and Ethan took it. After that handshake, the two of them walked into the small meeting room. Ethan glanced around. Sticky notes on the walls, whiteboard covered in half-finished plans, prototype samples stacked neatly in the corner. A space that screamed Ava. He smiled. I've never made an investment based purely on gut instinct until today. Ava looked at him, half uncertain, half already knowing what he was about to say. Ethan's voice lowered, no longer the cold CEO, but a man choosing to be honest. Ava, I didn't trust you. I pushed you away, and then I hid everything from you just to keep you safe. I don't know how to make up for that, but if I could do it all over again, I still would. Because watching you suffer, I'd rather carry it all myself. Today, I didn't just come here to sign an investment contract. I came to tell you something. I like you. I've liked you for a long time. The room went silent. The world seemed to pause for a heartbeat. Ava didn't answer right away. She walked closer, looked at him for a long, long time, as if to check if he was still hiding anything. Then she smiled softly, leaned in, and whispered, I know. Ethan froze. What? I knew. Back when you stood outside my hospital room about to walk in, but didn't. Only someone terrified of losing someone acts like that. But back then, I wasn't ready to hear it. Ethan swallowed, still unsure if this was real. Ava added gently, and now, I'm not sure love is something we should jump back into. But if you're patient, maybe someday. Ethan didn't reply with words. He only smiled, gently. He didn't need a promise, only a chance. And Ava had just given him that.